Canon has recently released a new firmware for the EOS R5C, and every time I go through the process of updating the camera, I always find something I forgot to do, or should have done, or should have remembered to do, or could have done better. What's up everybody, I'm Jason, and welcome back to some more tips and tricks for the EOS R5C. And this time we are going to be talking about upgrading the firmware on the R5C, kind of as a general process. We'll also be talking about what's special about this process compared to Canon's other EOS R hybrid cameras because, well, it is not quite the same. Now, as always, if your R5C is used in a critical production situation where no downtime is allowed, you will want to wait at least a few weeks to ensure that there aren't any show-stopping bugs. Now, as always with the R5C, when updating the firmware, it is done in video mode. And like all of the past updates, the firmware update will reset your video mode menu system and custom picture settings, but not the photo mode ones. So, before updating, it is recommended that you back up or transfer your menu settings to an SD card so that you can restore them after the update. Note, you will need to use an SD card for this. The camera will not save your menu settings to a CF Express card. To do this process, put an SD card in the SD card slot and then head to the System Setup 1 menu. Midway down the page, you will see Transfer Menu CP. Select this and then select the Save option from the next screen. The final transfer settings menu will ask you if you want to save your settings to the camera or to an SD card. Select to SD card. The camera will then ask you if you want to overwrite and save the data. Select OK and wait for the camera to write the data out to your card. The camera will overwrite any settings that you may have already saved on that card in the process. Now do note, you will receive this notice even if your SD card does not have any saved camera settings on it, even if it's completely blank because you just formatted it. Now, if you are unsure if there are camera settings on there, you can put the card in your computer, open it up, and look for a file called camset followed by two numbers .cmf, which will be found in the private camset folder. Now, if you don't see those folders or that file, then there are no settings files stored on your card, and you can go ahead and use it without worrying about it. Of course, you could just go ahead and erase the settings that were on there if you didn't care. When this is done, the camera will notify you that the process is complete and wait for you to hit OK to acknowledge. Now, at this point, you can remove the SD card from your camera and it'll have a copy of your camera's menu settings and custom picture settings saved on it. Now you can just go ahead and upgrade your firmware. This, of course, is done using an SD card as well. Again, it has to be an SD card, and Canon does not recommend using the same card as you saved your camera settings to. The setting for updating the firmware is found on the System Setup 9 menu page, under Firmware and then under Camera. Now, before upgrading, I have a couple of recommendations that I would like to pass along. First, I would recommend that you remove any other cards in your camera. I've never personally had a problem with this, but it just seems like a safe idea. You may also want to remove your lens and just have a body cap on the camera as well. Again, I've never had an issue, but if you want to be all out for safe, again, possibly a good idea. Finally, you want to make sure that you have as much power in the camera as possible, so use a fully charged LPE6NH battery. Now, your firmware update shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, maybe 5. I didn't actually time it when I did, but it certainly wasn't like half an hour. But during this process, you do not want the camera to lose power. Or you will probably have to send it to Canon to have it fixed because power interruptions during firmware updates almost always brick things that aren't designed to deal with them. Now, once the upgrade process is complete, the camera will automatically restart. On boot, it will prompt you to enter the date and time. Once you've done that, you will be right back to the normal recording standby screen and ready to go. Now, at this point, all of your video mode settings and custom pictures stuff will be reset. So you will want to switch back to the card that you saved your settings on, and this time go back to the Transfer Menu CP setting menu page thing on the System Setup 1 menu page. Now this time, instead of going save, we're going to go load. We're going to select from the SD card, and we're going to select OK when it asks you if you want to overwrite settings. That will load stuff and reset your camera back up the way it was before. Now you can, of course, also use these save settings to transfer your settings from one camera to another. So if you happen to be lucky enough to have two EOS R5s, or R5Cs I should say, and you want them to have the same settings, then save the settings to the card from one of them, and then load it from the card on the other. Now, one thing to note, though, is that the cameras must have the same or newer firmware version than what was used when the settings were saved. In other words, you can save your settings on a camera running firmware version 1.0.6.1 and then load them on a camera running 1.0.7.1, but not the other way around. Now, that said, as I said earlier, your photo mode settings should not be changed or reset. I have no idea why Canon can write an update process that can preserve one set of camera settings but not the other, but that's the way it is. If you want to be extra cautious, you can also back up your photo mode camera settings to an SD card or CF Express card as well. You'll find the setting for this on the Setup 5 menu page under Save/Load Cam Settings on Card. Now to back up your photo mode settings, select that menu entry and then select Save to Card from the next screen. The camera will then notify you that it will save the settings as camset01.csd and ask you to continue. Hit OK and the camera settings will be saved. Now, where will they be saved? Well, unlike in video mode, where the camera always saves to an SD card, this will save your settings to the currently active card in your camera. Now, if you only have one card in your camera, be it SD or CF Express, then that's the card that will be used. If you have both cards in your camera, then the one that is currently selected, as indicated by this arrow overlaid on the shooting info screen, is the one that will be used. Now you can also change the name of the settings file. To do this, press the info button on the confirmation screen here. Your file name can be up to 8 characters long, so no, you're not writing a novel here. Also, even though your settings files can have custom names, you can only have 10 on a card. The good news here is that the movie mode menu/custom picture file does not count towards that limit. Now, additionally, while you can save your menu and custom picture settings and restore them, the camera will reset a few of the settings on it. Specifically, these will be things like the shooting settings like white balance and ISO. This also includes your stored white balances in the A and B custom white balance setting. Now, if you're like me and you use them to store a studio white balance so you can just shoot in a constant location, you will absolutely need to go through the process of redoing that white balance in that environment with a proper white balance target and all of that jazz after you update this firmware, just like you've had for every firmware you've updated in the past. So with that said, I hope you found this useful or at least interesting. If this kind of thing seems like it might be your kind of thing, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. You can also help support this channel if you'd like by either liking this video or sharing it. You can also support us directly by hitting that thanks button or buying yourself something you've always wanted from one of the affiliate links found in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.